But it's really trying to show what happens when you combine reading and writing. Some people used to call it annotating, but now you find threads of thought in things where the difference between who's the author and who's the reader starts to change. Now, in fiction, this may not be as good an idea. This may not be what you want. Fiction, you really want the narrative of a single author, or at least most often you want that narrative. But in nonfiction, it's in fact a really interesting way to do it, which previously didn't exist very much. Now, too often the people who write comments haven't considered it as deeply as the person who wrote the initial material, but more and more collaborative writing is coming thanks to electronic books and electronic media. In the writing, sort of what's right, what's wrong, again, the Wikipedia to me is a wonderful example, because even if it's wrong, it gets better over time. And people correct things. And one of the interesting things to do on the Wikipedia is to look at the changes. And what's been changed is in some sense almost more interesting than what has been stated. And then of course, the last thing is that publishing is now, today, I find that I don't need to publish in a particular place. I just need to get it out virally. And so if you publish something in a venerable journal or a newspaper, yes, it'll be read by a certain number of people, but the people who are the largest number of readers are in fact the readers who are looking at the second and third generation of it that's being spread over the internet. So I don't know, for example, if people are Twittering in this room, but it's one of the best ways to get information out, because you Twitter and then somebody retweets and then retweets, and that then goes out very, very quickly and is a totally different kind of publishing, but is publishing nonetheless. And so the publishing, which had to do with the delivery of the bits versus the selection of them, is changing quite dramatically. And this happens to be from Afghanistan. A couple of weeks ago, it's particularly important for girls, because girls, as I said in the beginning, in Afghanistan, 75% of them don't go to school. And there's a very sort of cliche expression in economic development that says to educate a boy is to educate a person, to educate a girl is to educate a family. And cliche or not, it's really quite important. And when you get cultures that don't educate girls or have not educated them as much, it's an important change. So I will recommend that you sort of stop looking for the perfect economic model. There isn't one. There are many. The music industry has learned that. There's some musicians that give away the music free and charge enormous amounts for the concert. There are others that the concert's free and they charge for the DVD. There's some, there's just all the models, and one of the things we've learned in the digital world is that they all work in different ways at different times, and there's not one magic model. And that's very hard for people to believe, because they really are hoping that there's one magic solution, and there really isn't. And it's a combination of subscription, advertising, and sales, and maybe even other things that we don't know or we haven't thought of yet. I want to end with this image as my last image, and this is in Peru. Now, in Peru, President Garcia did the same thing that President Vasquez did. He announced one laptop per child. And that was very important because, again, it's not just the head of state announcing it, but it's, in fact, everybody hearing it. And he then went on to make a very fundamental decision. He said the first 500,000 laptops will go to the remote villages where they don't even speak Spanish. It's really remote and otherwise disconnected villages. And I thought that was very important for a reason that I've learned in the past couple of years, and then for reasons that's shown in this image. What I've learned in the past couple of years is that let me back up. 5 years ago, if I were on the stage, I would have told you that one laptop per child would help end poverty, because it raised level of education. I hadn't considered isolation quite as much. And if it can end isolation, that's really important. Because isolation plus poverty is a deadly cocktail. So isolation here, a year and a half ago, with the then Minister of Defense, Santos, who's now your president, we went to the FARC region, which had been previously isolated. And so it was a perfect example of bringing laptops to end isolation. And here in Peru, Garcia was doing it, Karzai in Afghanistan is all set to do it. But something else happened in Peru that we knew might happen, but it happened very dramatically, and that is the kids started teaching their parents how to read and write. And to me, that's perhaps the most, impactful result that we've had. If really that many children can be teaching their parents how to read and write, I think that's I don't have a better story. I don't have anything better to tell you. So I will end with this comment, and it's something you'll say is obvious, but I don't know about people in this audience. I make almost no telephone calls. In fact, people joke because I really make ridiculously none. If I do 2 phone calls a week, that's pretty extreme. And I wouldn't suggest you go to that extreme, but I bet everybody in this room makes less phone calls. Instead, you send messages, at least you're not making a phone call to set up a phone call, to set up a phone call, and so on. You do it. And even if you haven't gone completely, you're going to find that use of voice is going to drop. The actual use of voice and recorded message is much less than it was. And we counted today with young people. Now let's not take the kids in remote Peru or Afghanistan or here in Colombia that are in remote parts or very poor parts of the country, but just your kids. The amount of time that they spend messaging and online and consuming words is very high, and much higher than what it was when you were a child. That, to me, is fascinating. You say, well, that's not literature, those aren't books, but it's still reading and writing. And what I would argue is that if the consumption of words is going up so much, this is not the end of literature, it's not the end of nonfiction, anything but it is the end of the physical book. That just will not be. Thank you very much, and I don't know if there's time for questions on the mechanism, but